Gideon from DIBA, Lancen and LaChance from Rootstock, Zhixi from BOB, and Rishabh from Sats Terminal. Welcome to the stage. Welcome, welcome. There she is. No, you're totally good. You're totally good. You and Rishabh may have to share a mic if that's not too annoying. Okay, so we only got a couple panels left. Appreciate everybody who's still stimulated by all of this. I see some folks hanging out and listening to all the panels. This is really fabulous. We have an awesome group of people here, and the topic here is very relevant to all of you, I do believe. As we are in the era now of BTC Fi, we're here at Bitcoin Denver. We're talking about scaling Bitcoin throughout the day. We've talked about stablecoins. We've talked about runes. We've talked about ordinals. And we have a bunch of builders and representatives from companies really, really leading this ecosystem at the moment. So I'd actually like to take a moment and pass the mic around and get some intros across the board. Lancen, would you give us a kickoff from our lovely partners at Rootstock?
Absolutely. Yeah. Hi, I'm Lancen LaChance. I'm a product manager at Rootstock Labs. Rootstock Labs is the key contributor to Rootstock, a Bitcoin sidechain. We were the first EVM-compatible Bitcoin network. And yeah, happy to help scale Bitcoin and look forward to talking about with it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Gideon, appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. My name is Gideon. I'm the founder and CEO of DIBA. So DIBA basically stands for Digital Bitcoin Arts and Assets. And so we've been really looking into the future where we're going to have all assets is going to be on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to be the main place to settle assets. And we have a flagship product called Bitmask. So Bitmask has become quite popular, especially within the RGB community. So RGB is a very old technology in Bitcoin where people are doing Turing complete smart contracts natively to Bitcoin UTXOs. And we are backed by investors like DRIPA Associates, Acti Ventures, Water Drip Capital, Marshall Eagle Funds, and many others. And the interesting thing with our work is that we really believe that Turing complete smart contracts on Bitcoin is the future. And that is why we've just become this wallet, especially with Bitmask, that is focused on RGB and, as of recently, Rootstock. So we will be, Rootstock, it's what we call...
This is the alpha.
This is the alpha, yeah. So Rootstock is what we call the, personally to me, I think that Rootstock is what we call the Bitcoin EVM finance because Rootstock uses the EVM style contracts, but then it's merge mined using the Bitcoin hash power, which essentially it's actually very secure against trying to secure with with coins or other things, which coins can always come and go. But the hash power will always be there, right? And then RGB is, native Bitcoin smart contracting, and we will also be launching the first OG version of RGB assets ever this March. So, and we're looking forward to start making these final movements in RGB, in Rootstock, in Bitcoin, Turing complete smart contracts movement. Thank you.
Fabulous, fabulous. I love it. And we got some alpha right in the intro. How cool. Rishabh is joining us from Sats Terminal. Rishabh, tell us a little bit about yourself.
For sure. Hi, I'm Rishabh Java. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Sats Terminal. And we're the DeFi aggregation protocol for Bitcoin. So essentially, when we're early in the Bitcoin space, I was working with a couple of DAOs and ordinals and BRC. Can you, okay, yeah, that's better. Need to have it all the way up here. Yeah, a couple of DAOs early in the ordinals and BRC20 space. And it was exciting to see an ecosystem forming on Bitcoin, but it was just so hard to use. We had people accidentally paying 100 times what they were supposed to and trying to do swaps. And it just felt like a big problem to solve. And that's what we're trying to contribute to. We're building a DEX aggregator right now that's actually already live. We also work with Runes DEX already, amongst other AMMs and marketplaces. And very soon we'll be entering the staking and bridging ecosystem as well. So yeah,
huge, huge. We're scaling, we're scaling. Zhixi is literally from a company called Build on Bitcoin, BOB, and you are absolute leaders in the space. Tell us a little bit about you and the beautiful ecosystem you're developing.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Hello? Oh, wow. Thank you. My name is Zhixi. Can you hear me even?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, my name is Zhixi Zhang. So I work on the BD team with Bob. Bob stands for Build on Bitcoin, like you said. But ironically, we are a Ethereum L2, like a proper one. Bob is built on OP Stack, so the technical nature is very similar to chains like Base, OPBNB, and Inc. And we position ourselves as a hybrid L2. The goal is to bring the best of Bitcoin and Ethereum together, so you can, as a user, you have a EVM experience. When you do anything as a developer, you can simply copy and paste your Solidity contract and then deploy it on Bob, but you have access to all kinds of strategies to earn yield on Bitcoin and hopefully interact with all kinds of Bitcoin assets, not limited to Bitcoin itself, but also including like ruins, ordinals, and anything that's about to come.
Beautiful, beautiful. The theme today is scaling Bitcoin, and this is the Scaling Bitcoin panel. And we are with some folks who are absolute OGs and representing companies, many of which have been in the space for years, way longer than a lot of people consider Bitcoin DeFi. With the launch of ordinals and runes. Especially some folks on this panel have been in the space for 4, 5, 6+ years. Building and creating infrastructure. Plus, I should say. And so would love to pass the mic down again and kind of bring us back for anybody who is relatively new to the ecosystem. What does BTCFi, or what does DeFi on Bitcoin mean for you and your company? Lancen, can you kick us off?
Yeah, sure. It's probably appropriate since Rootstock's one of the OGs in the Bitcoin L2 space. And really, this question of how do we scale Bitcoin is what Rootstock was built for, right? And we look at Bitcoin as an asset and as a network. Bitcoin, in my estimation, and probably by market, sentiment, is the best asset, the best digital asset the world has ever seen, right? However, the network that it operates on is limiting, right? So the network is by design not as flexible, as functional as Ethereum. And so Rootstock's founding team and vision basically saw all the amazing things going with Ethereum and said, we want to do that, but we like Bitcoin as the asset. And so they basically took the Ethereum code and forked it and made that work with Bitcoin as the asset. So we're fundamentally aligned with Bitcoin as the asset, but we brought all of the functionality and capability of Ethereum. And so this question of how do you scale Bitcoin, it really then ties back to what do you want to do with your Bitcoin, right? And this is DeFi in many cases, right? The current du jour focus is largely around yield. It's around using your Bitcoin as collateral for loans, transacting in Bitcoin in different ways. But scaling Bitcoin to me is largely around the use case scaling. There's definitely technical scaling capabilities that are important to look at, and block size and things like that are interesting technical discussions. But the biggest gap is to get Bitcoin into the hands of users in important use cases. The core use cases still right now are fundamentally financially related, tied to savings and growth or preservation of capital largely. And some of those more advanced strategies are not possible in Bitcoin. So scaling is a use case scaling for me.
I love it. I love it. This is huge. Gideon, take us back. Take us back to the early days of assets on Bitcoin and how you got to where you are today. And what is BTCFi again?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? I think that first I'll start with what I think BTCFi is not, right? I think that in Bitcoin, we've always, like from the beginning, Vitalik really wanted to build like smart contracts on Bitcoin. But then it was not possible, right? Now that we have Taproot as Taproot, and then, it's now becoming possible to actually have that. But then, we've seen like a very interesting wave of, what we call Bitcoin layer 2s, which are actually not Bitcoin layer 2s, right? They're actually a different chain, right? And I think that the idea is how do we really bring, these utilities to be aligned as much as possible as Bitcoin, right? Either by using Bitcoin's, energy, and you're doing the transactions and it's related to Bitcoin, right? Or, where you are actually running those storing complete smart contracts natively on Bitcoin, and you can actually swap to Bitcoin, right? And that it's more of a segue to, the scaling question, which I think from what I know so far, this is another alpha, that some people have already like figured out how we can scale Bitcoin layer 1 transactions using single-use seals to up to 5 million transactions per second. Now, what is a single-use seal? It's something that Peter Todd invented. It's essentially how you bind, cryptographically bind a smart contract, an RGB smart contract, to a piece of UTXO, and then every time you spend the seal with ZK, you can like have multiple transactions all packed into like a smaller Bitcoin block. And so you can have actually more transactions happening using single-use seals. And so I think like there's a lot of much more of research work going in the people like related with RGB smart contract stuff. But this is called Prime. I've seen the white paper already. It's pretty much how you can scale Bitcoin infinitely. But then if we talk about Lightning, Lightning has done a great job, right? Where we're having like smart contracts happening on Lightning. And so like to end end my spiel, I think that we're really moving into a new dynamics, right? Where the next bull market is going to be on Bitcoin. It will probably start, somewhere on Rootstock and RGB, and then you will get to other places. I mean, and then taproot assets too, because again, it's all about like the stable coins. The Daddy Bitfinex and USDT that are working on issuing stable coins directly on Bitcoin, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see that happen.
I agree. And we got more alpha. I love it. Rishabh, you're aggregating, you're integrating, a lot of active aspects of DeFi directly on Bitcoin in a number of different respects. But you're also an OG in the space. So walk us back a little bit and give us your definition of Bitcoin DeFi.
Yeah, for sure. Firstly, I fully agree with what you were saying with how scaling on Bitcoin needs to go beyond just the number of transactions and more about being able to scale what you can do with the network and while being adjacent to the network, because fully aligned again on like Bitcoin being the best asset, and right now we're just limited in how much we can do with it, and this is a problem because if you look at the Bitcoin blocks over the past 2 or 3 weeks, they've been empty on mainnet, and that means miners are earning like $500 in actual transaction fees on every block going through. So when you look at the mempool and you see that a miner for mining a block is making $500, this might not be a problem right now because, well, we have block subsidy, which is like a couple $100,000. But in the next 4 years, in the next 8 years, this becomes a very big problem for Bitcoin because miners will no longer have an incentive to secure the network, to contribute hash power to actually mining these blocks. So having assets that are natively on Bitcoin, having these transactions natively on Bitcoin is effectively important to save Bitcoin, not now, but in the next 4 years and 8 years. And that's why initially when I'd seen like ordinals and BRC20s, it was really exciting because blocks are full again. If you look at like, I think if you look at the halving block was probably the most amount of money miners have ever made in a single block. Right? And I personally spent, I think, $700 in a single transaction just to get it in the halving block. Do I regret it? 100%. But it was great to see that happening. And I think for the sustainability of Bitcoin, for the sustainability of, I guess, all the other blockchains as well, because it all comes back to Bitcoin in the end, having this ecosystem, having DeFi on Bitcoin is extremely important. And like that's why we like decided to get into this space, make it more user-friendly, make it easier to use, work with pretty much all of these asset classes and different chains that are coming up. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, respectfully, right? I think I disagree with what you said. I mean, it's more people have been saying that, hey, without mining rewards, Bitcoin is going to die. That is absolute crap. It's not going to happen. It doesn't really matter. Like, so miners will go. In fact, mining is going to become much more decentralized with time. And if you earn $100, it's fine. If you earn nothing, it's fine. Like, there were times when Bitcoin didn't have anything. What really matters with Bitcoin is the hash power, not the mining rewards. The mining rewards doesn't matter. It absolutely doesn't matter.
We've
I mean,
got a
miners
debate.
do need to make money.
Miners
right?
need to make money. Yeah. But miners,
it's expensive to mine.
So imagine a scenario where miners don't make as much money as they are, and now mining becomes decentralized. So you can actually run a full node because when you're running a full node, you are technically a miner, right? And if you look at the work that Ocean is doing in the way of decentralizing mining, down the line, every phone will actually be called a Bitcoin miner. And if that is the case, the miners basically all they do is gather the nodes and rearrange everything and issue new coins. Now, when the coins are over to be issued, what would the miners be doing? Nothing. So it's actually going to be the node runners. So down the line, you will really get to understand that, yeah, it kind of makes sense, but it doesn't.
Ooh. I think we're going to dive down deeper in this rabbit hole. I want to get Lancen's take on this as well. But before we do that,
I'm
no,
trying
no,
to
no.
be
Hey, not everybody has to agree on everything. This is part of the part. This is part of the purpose. Let's have discourse. Zhixi would love to ask you the same question, but let's dive in on the DeFi side. You know, how do you see the intersection between Bitcoin and DeFi working? Obviously, as an EVM chain, how do you operate within the space, and how do you see it developing?
Yeah, thank you. So well, first of all, I like this kind of discussion. I like it when people actually have a conversation, and I think that's the whole point of coming to like a conference in real life. Yeah, so Bitcoin, why Bitcoin and DeFi? I think like DeFi itself, like a few years ago, we would call DeFi a niche, like just like how we look at BTC Fi as a niche right now. But like now we wouldn't really look at DeFi as a niche in the crypto industry because it's becoming a very matured sector of finance. Institutions adopt it. People have different demand. There are products for everybody in at least the matured DeFi ecosystem versus there is very limited amount of things that you can do in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And also very limited ways for people to make money. Like traditionally, I guess, before DeFi and everything, before like Rootstock and Stacks, like the main way to earn from Bitcoin is to mine Bitcoin. You join like a mining pool and everything. And of course, like the reason why I'm mentioning is because I want to dive this back to what they're discussing, which is like using mining as a miner as an example. Like there's always the discussion of like, would all the miners go bankrupt the next day? So like we can see there's so many layers in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and even like the most fundamental ones, miners might have to face like the issue related to profitability. That's why I really appreciate what Rootstock do with like merge mining being one of the earliest ecosystem and chains to actually provide extra yield, extra like earnings for Bitcoin miners, and incentivize more people to join our ecosystem. And I think Rootstock, like I know I work for Bob, but I just want to put this out there. Like Rootstock is a really good example of why BTC Fi matter, because you like as a miner you can just operate your business solely on Bitcoin chain. But and a lot of time when you speak to these like mining companies, they have like a venture studio, they have the mining pools, and even like when I speak to them, I realized like the BD people on the mining side, they don't even know fully what the pools are doing, because a lot of these miners are merge mining multiple chains without everybody knowing, because there is this like maxi kind of idea, but that actually doesn't align with people who is working in this industry. So long story short, we need BTC Fi matters because there's a lot of demand. People working in or living in different layers of the Bitcoin ecosystem have different risk appetite, have different reasons how they want to scale their business, and that's why all of us are here exploring different kind of technologies to meet that growing demand.
Very, very well said. And now we're really seeing this intersection and juxtaposition of, you know, L1 Bitcoin as it's traditionally thought of, mining, you know, a token that we can potentially use as a store of value, but also hopefully a whole bunch of other things. You know, if we're taking ourselves back to 2014, 15, everybody was just looking for a use case. But now we're really diving into this cross-chain future, into this DeFi future, into this world where we can do all the same things that we would do on any other blockchain directly on L1 Bitcoin through a number of different means. And so, Lancen, I'm sure you have a number of different points to bring up across the board here, but we'd love to get your thoughts on this evolution. How have you seen and how has Rootstock really helped bridge that gap? And how do you see, I'm very curious to hear your POV on this whole miners and hash rate and fees debate as well.
I think like this discussion that Gideon brought up is really interesting, right? I don't necessarily share the view that the security budget isn't important. I think, I mean, Rootstock, as we talked about, is contributing fees back to the miners, right? And this is important for us because we believe that the security budget is important for the longevity of the chain. Otherwise, it does open the door for 51% attacks to the consensus of the chain. And so like this is now a means for long-term sustainability of what we built the network on, being Bitcoin the asset, right? And bringing that back into the ecosystem is really important. The other things that go on in the Bitcoin ecosystem are, really relevant and interesting for us when we talk about scaling. Like, you see a lot of discussion today on OpCat, and block size isn't so much a big conversation, but it's all really relevant for us. I mean, the OpCat at some level we're not really super concerned with one way or the other. We feel like a lot of what Rootstock has done and built delivers better capabilities than OpCat is going to get you, and we have a strong mechanism on the asset that you're using on the network, and it's very well connected into the ecosystem. But other technologies to scale, like BitVM, and we've launched a project, BitVMX, a joint venture with Fairgate Labs, and from this we're launching and releasing an open source Union Bridge, right? And this is now a better bridge to Bitcoin, and using the BitVM concept in our iteration as BitVMX to basically bridge Bitcoin in a more secure way using that approach. And so like there's this notion of scaling that's functionality, but it's also the trust assumptions that you're bringing into the asset representation of Bitcoin on your chain. And this is really important to us too when we look at scaling, is like there's nothing that's going to be as good as having Bitcoin in mainnet. But having the next best thing is really what we try to do. And it's a trade-off, right? It's a risk-reward trade-off. So as you're pursuing these nice new use cases, you can't have all of the Bitcoin security, right? And even if you introduce potentially, OpCat or covenants or some of these new features, there's probably some degree of risk that you're now exposing your protocol to, or your Bitcoin to, via protocol risk, right? And so like it's trade-offs, and making these trade-offs well known and visible, and having reserves public and disclosed, like this is really important, and it's tying back into trust, right? And so how do we scale Bitcoin? The point I'm making is trust is really, really important into any solution that's being built on top of it. So transparency and audits and being able to bring these things to the market and the users is really important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is more important than ever now, especially with companies like yours, because when we're considering L1 Bitcoin, Bitcoin as large as it is not a company. It's not a Fidelity. It's not a McKinsey. It's not a, I don't know, Chase Bank, there we go. But not in that it's not an incredible sort of value, but in that it doesn't have a marketing department, an HR department, a finance department, et cetera, a legal department, probably most relevant to do due diligence and to go through processes. And so, from my perspective, and from I think a lot of folks' perspective, it really is up to the leaders in this scaling infrastructure space to be those trusted figures, both from the VC ecosystem, but also in terms of directly the scalability solutions such as Rootstock. It's up to us to be those trustworthy solutions, and verifiably so, not just on paper, because there has obviously been so much, scammy natures in the space across different chains, and even in the Mt. Gox days, this has been going on for quite some time. So, with this all in mind, Gideon, I know that you've experimented with all of these different solutions: Lightning, OpCat, Rootstock. Give us your perspective on how these are changing the ecosystem from your POV, and how you're using these different solutions, since you are now, of course, where we've announced it, building with Rootstock. How are you using these to really scale the infrastructure that you're building?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much for that question. I mean, I will a little bit revisit what I said earlier. I mean, what I said earlier, I've had some people say that if the blocks are not full, we will all die. Right, so that's like the point where I'm making. We will not all die. The blocks doesn't have to be full all the time. Any Bitcoin company that is successful is actually contributes to the miners, and it's just a natural precedence of things. And I don't really personally, I don't like when people push a propaganda from the fear perspective that if anything happens, we will all die. Right? That was like when Ordinals launched, everybody was saying, hey, if we don't make sure we fill the blocks, we're all gonna die. Bitcoin is gonna stop working. Nothing is going to happen, really. Bitcoin has gone so far that none of those things will happen. And before you know what's happening again, the blocks has a way of rearranging itself. So that's what I'm saying. We will not die. Not today, not next year, right? So, my perspective on the question that you asked is very interesting. I mean, since I started working on Bitcoin, I'm of the opinion that when people really start seeing that, hey, there's no difference between me, launching my own blockchain today and calling it an EVM chain, and you doing that. In fact, the next meme coins will be people launching their own blockchains. Kanye West wants to launch a blockchain, right? And when you look at it, what's the difference between those chains and all these other chains that exist, right? So it goes back to Bitcoin. I think the future is that everything is going to move back to Bitcoin, right? And Rootstock is a very good example of how people who have used EVM will easily want to come and use Rootstock because they're used to it and it's secured by Bitcoin mining power, right? RGB, on the other hand, it's a pretty interesting protocol which, for the first time, you'll be able to be doing atomic swap natively on Bitcoin, running things like that. And I think that's going to be very exciting. I mean, in this match, we plan to launch an OG version of RGB to see what happens. And once every of those transactions happen, it's happening on Bitcoin layer 1, miners are making money. So again, do I like the miners? Yes, of course I do, but we're not all going to die. That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Rishabh, I think you may have a retort to some of this, but also at the same time, I think that, just also to respond to what you were just saying, Gideon, the infrastructure is so important, and a lot of what happened in the past 4 or so years in the DeFi ecosystem was really, account abstraction, UI UX updates, like trying to just make the user experience as simple and easy as possible, even if that meant going even more centralized. But now we're seeing some of at least the same concept around just like ease of use being brought to Bitcoin thanks to folks like Rootstock and thanks to folks like Sats Terminal. So give us a little bit of an idea. I know you're building so much infrastructure now. Of course, we already have the aggregator live, but give us an idea of your POV on how this is all developing and where you see it going. Maybe the rate of hypermodernity increases every year. Moore's law is in the past, so next year who knows what's going to be happening with AGI and everything. But how do you see the next year kind of progressing, both for Sats Terminal and just in the ecosystem in general?
For sure. Firstly, I was trying to understand how node operators will become miners. So you'll have to explain that to me off-chain, because maybe I'm missing something here. But with regards to where I see the ecosystem going, I think it's great, all the activity that's happening on all the layer 1.5s and layer 2s that are happening within Bitcoin. Because first, Bitcoin's in mindshare again. Like, people are talking about an ecosystem on Bitcoin. Well, this was literally BTC Denver for me. I don't think I went to any ETH events, which is always great. And to what we were discussing earlier about scaling the capabilities of Bitcoin, I think as more of these execution layers are coming about, and also like with having applications across like Rootstock, people are going to be able to do more with their Bitcoin, going like beyond just layer 1. So with Sats Terminal 2, we want to bring as much of that close to L1 as we can. So for example, we have a lot of these AMMs that would be using the layer 1.5s, for example, with Glitter or some of the maybe Arch network. We want to see how we can tie that into the swapping experience for people that are already on mainnet. So like, for example, people used to using maybe RunesDex or Magic Eden through our aggregator. Now they also have an option of going through one of these layer 1.5s where maybe there's more liquidity there, but making sure it's like just as seamless for them. So we're able to, like, I guess, overall make the experience better. And just to, I think, touch upon some of the other things as well, with what we can do going into the EVM landscape, we want to see how we can maybe use account abstraction on layer 2s to unlock like the value that's on layer 1, where like with our staking product, what's going to happen is you're going to stake on mainnet, and then we're going to have account abstraction infrastructure on an EVM chain for you, where we're going to claim those rewards and then use session keys, etc., to maybe restake it or do whatever makes most sense for a specific strategy. And then when you want on your Bitcoin mainnet wallet, just bridge back those rewards. So for people that are comfortable with Bitcoin, everything stays on mainnet for them, and then we're taking care of things across ecosystem, as Sats Terminal. Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. Zhixi, I would love to pass it back to you. Speaking of this cross-chain infrastructure, speaking of how the space is developing, and when DeFi comes to Bitcoin, cross-chain is a piece of that, especially as we look at the ecosystem as a whole. And Bob is obviously a great example of this. So we'd love to see your perspective on how you see this cross-chain kind of interoperable future developing. And maybe similar question, how do you see the next year playing out in terms of how this is going to grow, and how we're going to bring more users back onto Bitcoin, but also just into Web3 in general?
Great. Yeah, this is a great question. So I want to structure my answer kind of like echoing in what all of you have mentioned, starting from, how do I pronounce it? Gideon. Gideon, yes, right. Like Gideon mentioned a very possible future where Kanye West might be launching his own on-chain, which I think is not far away at all. Like, if we look at a few years ago, it looked like such a big deal when someone have an app on the mobile store, and nowadays it become a thing where you can even launch an app with low code or no code experience. Everything you can write a website with absolutely zero knowledge with coding, and this is gonna happen with blockchain. And how I don't see it. I don't fully know your point, but like I don't see this as a sad thing. I actually see this as a very, very bullish thing for mass adoption beyond our current little bubble. So with that being said, interoperability is more important than ever, and that's why I guess like there's the existence of a superchain idea in the Optimism ecosystem, and there is the parachain idea in the Polkadot ecosystem. All of them, of course, like they're not what they advertise to be yet, but the vision is that the movement of assets and messages between chain and chain should be as seamless as possible. Just like how I can now in my Revolut exchange my US dollar for euro without having to go to the bank. And so there's the movement between EVM chains that's being developed through the EVM devs, including things like chain abstraction, account abstraction, and all that. But there's also the Bitcoin to Ethereum or Bitcoin to other ecosystem cross-chain, which is touched on by Lance, which is BitVM, which we are also researching very heavily on. So like, for us, we share the same vision. We believe that BitVM is the future for bringing Bitcoin to other places. And on top of that, we are going to see seamless movement of assets between all of these chains, and is inevitable. Cross-chain is not going back.
Very well said. Very well said. That was an awesome answer. We're coming towards the end of our panel. I just wanted to pass the mic around one more time because this has been a really amazing conversation. I really enjoyed this. I love when a conversation has both a debate and a conclusion, and you know, actual opinions being shared in the mix. I think we've had a lot of these today, which has been really refreshing. Would love to pass the mic down the line just one more time. Let's get bullish. You know, we're moving into hopefully BTC Fi summer. Things are evolving rapidly. We're all building, we're all creating, we're all scaling this ecosystem. And so would love to have, this is a two-parter, would love to have each of your bullish sentiments on 2025 and what you're particularly excited for, maybe in the next 3 to 6 months. And then if you could let us know, each of you, where we can find you and your incredible companies online.
Amazing. Yeah. So I'm bullish in a number of areas. I think in the U.S. particularly, there's a lot of favorable winds in the regulatory space that has really hindered, you know, work in crypto and in Bitcoin in the U.S. And hopefully this can open up capital in other markets that lead to more innovations, more users, you know, whether those users are institutional level or whatnot. And so I think like that's an area I'm really bullish on. And then, you know, I think we you know, have a lot of opportunity here to bring some really nice use cases into the ecosystem, specifically around Bitcoin yield right now. And so I think that over time we'll see a almost more, you know, framework come to market on how risk is assessed in the Bitcoin yield, you know, space. There's a lot of buzz going on in staking. We'll see, you know, how long that maintains that buzz, and if that collapses at all, we'll see. But I think, you know, outside of that, there's still a lot of places where Bitcoin as a asset can be deployed, and as a Bitcoin holder, you can do that. So yeah, I think those are some of the things I'm kind of bullish on. And you know, I love to see, you know, our partners. We have a great partner ecosystem coming into Rootstock, and there's a lot of momentum we've built over the past 18 months, and the capabilities they're bringing are really good. So yeah, so to find us, Rootstock.io is the website. You can find me at LL Laserface for X, and yeah, it was great to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much for this awesome panel with great panelists. You know, I'm very bullish about like what's going to happen in Bitcoin. I think that, you know, when you look at historically at all chains that actually experienced, apart from Bitcoin, even though like the first stable coins was issued on Bitcoin, USDT issued stable coins on Bitcoin, but it wasn't really working, and they took it off, right? And then moved to other chains, which actually build better useful protocols because Bitcoin then was limited. And if we look at all those chains, we've seen that they have all witnessed like really bull runs. And I think a lot of that happened because of USDT deploying USD capital directly on those chains. And in this year, we'll probably see a lot of volume being deployed directly of USDT coming directly to Bitcoin or USDC or all those kinds of stable coins. And that's going to be a very, very wild moment. So I think like we're likely going to see more of Bitcoin becoming a financial, capital of the world where everyone is settling transactions. While, every other chain can have that, blockchain for cats, blockchain for anything, which is going to be a very bullish moment, too. I would definitely want to use a blockchain for cats and dogs. It makes sense. It's fun, right? So there's something for everybody, right? And, just like looking down into the future, I'm bullish to see, how the world, institutions, and everybody adopts Bitcoin. So you can find us at DIBA, DIBA.io, or you can go to Bitmask, BITMASK.app. So that's where you can find, anything about what we're doing. And, mainly about RGB. RGB is also very cool, slow. It's been the hardest thing to ever work on. But hey, we're doing some very cool things here. And, let's be hopeful and keep working hard. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you partially stole my answer. I think stables coming to Bitcoin is going to be great. Because right now also, like, we have this standard war on Bitcoin where it's going to be runes, BRC20s, maybe RGB, or something else, which is like the most widely accepted token standard. And I think that's just because we don't have like a single authority in this space, right? On Ethereum, we have like ERC20, and then everybody's like, that's the token standard we're all going to follow. But on Bitcoin, we have this sort of within Bitcoin war going on which token standard's really going to prevail. So I think stables getting issued again is going to be like a big deciding factor here based on like whichever, like, I guess, standard Tether ends up using for deploying USDT on mainnet. And that will help give the space more clarity as well, and it'll help us with our aggregator product get a lot more clarity on where to go as well. So I'm super excited for that. I think that's going to happen this year. Beyond that, I think we want to find more use cases for people to put their Bitcoin to use. We see a lot of value in people transacting on mainnet on Bitcoin again, and whether it's just to contribute to another ecosystem, contribute to another L2, but as long as some part of that activity is happening on mainnet, we want to see if we can make that happen more easily and with better user experiences. And to find us, it's just Sats Terminal, SATS terminal.com. And I'm Rishabh Java across all platforms. Thank you.
Thank you. You can find me as Nikki_sunset on Twitter. Our official website is gobob.xyz. I'm bullish. I guess I would just, they all have the great answer. I would just go from a personal perspective, not representing my team or anything. Like, two things. One is the ordinals. I think there's a lot of technologies that's coming up. I personally love ordinals, art on Bitcoin, and I hope. And the other, I guess, would be payment. Like, when can we have a payment solution for Bitcoin where my parents or my grandparents can actually use?
Absolutely, that's always the goal. I try to give myself credit for being quite good at usually explaining very complicated topics to normal people, and my contingency is, can I explain it to my mom? Which sometimes is yes, but often is no. So thank you, everybody, for your time. One round of applause for our amazing panelists. Thank you so much. And yeah, we're going to be back up and running in about 2 minutes with our final panel on bringing more liquidity to Bitcoin, something we really need. So we'll be right back.